Welcome to the lesson on lipids. This is the second lesson of the macronutrients, those carbohydrate, lipids, and proteins. Now we're going to start this lesson as we did with carbohydrate, where we're going to define and categorize those compounds. Broadly, lipids are molecules that don't dissolve into water. That's a very broad category of compounds, but there are primarily two. There are fats and there are sterols. The sterols would be something like cholesterol. Between these two, most of them, 95%, are fats. So the lesson will look at both categories, but it will primarily focus in on fats. When studying fats, there are a large number of terms that you're going to need to understand. Things such as triglycerides and saturated fat and unsaturated fat and omega-3 and trans. Now, to understand those terms, you've got to look at the chemical structures of fats. You won't have to draw the chemical structures, but you will need to be able to look at them and recognize them and to see how one differs from the other and how they influence the fat in foods and in our bodies. For example, if we look at something like a solid fat like Crisco, which is going to be solid at room temperature, and compare to that something like corn oil that we have here. Now, they have the same amount of calories and the same amount of fat, but it's the type of fatty acids that make it solid or liquid at room temperature. If we look at something that is like corn oil and olive oil, both of these are liquid at room temperature, so it's not as easy to see the difference in fatty acids, but they are very different as well. So that's where we're going to start. We're going to be looking at the categories of fats and fatty acids and how they differ in combinations with different foods. Now, once you understand how fats and foods differ one from the other, we can then better understand how they influence the fats in our body. And this is an example where you are what you eat, but probably not how you think about it. We are not going to have more body fat if we eat more fat in our foods. The amount of fat that we have in our body is determined by the total amount of calories. Rather, it is things such as our cell membranes and our blood lipids that will change in response to the types of fats that we eat. So after we review the fat composition in foods, we will bring them into our body. We're going to review how the body digests and absorbs them, and then we're going to have them see how the body transports those lipids in our body. And our body has multiple compounds to deliver, return, and clear those lipids. And these compounds are called lipoproteins. And they have specific names like low-density lipoproteins, or LDL, and high-density lipoproteins, or HDLs. The amounts of these lipoproteins that we have in our body will influence our risk for chronic disease, such as cardiovascular disease. And it's a common error, and sometimes with beginning students, to think that we eat LDL and we eat HDL, which we don't. Our bodies make them. But our bodies will make more or less of them, depending on the types of fat that we have in our food. So, in this lesson, we're going to start by reviewing the types of categories of lipids and looking at terminology. We're going to digest them. We're going to bring them in our body. We're going to see how they influence the amount and types of lipoproteins. And then we're going to see how they impact our risk for chronic disease.